We spent 3 weeks in Japan searching for the best Japanese tea and matcha, and along the way, we met with tea farmers, matcha producers, potters, whisk masters, and each one had their own unique story to tell. We would love to share their stories with you and invite you on the journey of a lifetime as we travel across Japan on our quest for tea. We'll begin in Tokyo, where matcha has escaped the tea room and taken on a life of its own, in lattes, desserts, tasting menus, convenience stores, and creations you won't find anywhere else on Earth. Then, we'll head to Japan's largest tea-producing region, Shizuoka, as we meet with some of the larger tea producers we work with and see how the recent matcha boom is affecting them. We'll then take a trip over to the historic heart of Japan and explore 800 years of tea history in Kyoto. We'll tour Japan's most famous teapot region in Tokoname, track down a master potter in Shigaraki, and visit a family in Takayama that's been carving matcha whisks by hand for 25 generations. The journey continues as we head down south and learn the secrets of Yame, considered one of the best regions for matcha. We check in with the legendary Gyokuro farmer Sakamoto-san, who was just recently named the best tea farmer in all of Japan. Finally, we'll take a boat over to Tanegashima and learn why this tiny little island off the coast of southern Japan plays a key role in the Japanese tea industry. Over 3 weeks, we'll cross the country, meet with people behind the craft, and uncover what it really takes to bring Japanese tea from the field to your cup. It's gonna be an action-packed tea adventure, and you're not gonna wanna miss it. Our journey begins in Tokyo, a bustling city of 36 million people, and one of the best places on earth to get a matcha.
All right, everybody, we are back here in Japan. It was a long flight. We're a little bit jet lagged, but luckily, we know just the cure for that.
We're starting our matcha tour in Asakusa, but we only have 10 minutes until our first place closes, so we need to pick up the pace a little bit.
It's hard not ending up in a photo here. Everyone's taking selfies. Closes at 5 p.m. It's gonna be a little bit tight, but we got 7 minutes to spare. Okay, so you can barely see it now, but that's the beer building. It's meant to look like a big foamy pint of beer. You see all the glass is gold to look like the body of the beer. And then the top has that nice foamy head to it.
In Tokyo, there's no shortage of colorful distractions, but we were on a mission to find matcha, and we only had 3 minutes.
Protect the mic.
It was time to get serious. We finally made it to Hatoya Asakusa, a fabulous little matcha shop located in between Sensoji Temple and the Tokyo Skytree. What I really liked about this place is that they use very minimal sweetener and the menu isn't too expansive. They really focus on good matcha with only a few clean, balanced drinks with plant milk and a few basic toppings.
Okay, so this is our first matcha latte of the trip. It's from Hatoya Asakusa. This was sold as a toasted matcha latte, and they told me that the flavor comes not from added ingredients, but from the matcha itself. The matcha has a toasted flavor to it. We would call that hika, or this roasted aroma. The roasted aroma has a similar flavor as kinako, or roasted soybean flour, and this is a particularity of Yame. So Yame matcha has this flavor profile, typically, this kind of nutty or roasted flavor. It's really working well in this matcha, so if I had to guess where it's from, I would say it's a Yame. Then right behind me, we have the next exciting matcha thing. So these vending machines actually keep the drinks cold in the warmer months, and sometimes you'll have some that keep them hot in the cold months. So right now, everything's set to cold. We have a matcha shot here, which I'm definitely keen on trying. So we're gonna put a few yen coins in here and see what we get. I have 500. These are 10s. Oh, actually, this is a 10 yen coin, and that's Byodo-in Temple. So this is in Uji, so the most famous region for matcha in Japan. But I'm gonna put this 500 in. Ooh, almost got a spill there. Then I'm gonna hit a matcha shot. Oh, maybe they don't take 500s. Can we try bills then?
Can you hold your matcha?
Yes. I don't want to spill a drop of that. We have 1,000 yen. Here we have this beautiful picture of the Great Wave. Oh yeah, it's ice cold. So this is actually really interesting. So this is refrigerated, and because it's a metal can, it keeps the drink really cold. So it's like really cold to the touch. Oh wow. It's like, I don't know if you can see that, but it's like steaming because it's so cold. Definitely not as good as the latte we just had, but for 180 yen, I'm not really expecting a whole lot. But this is really good if you're on the way to work or you're kind of in a hurry and you just need a little kind of caffeine L-theanine boost and you don't want to go for a coffee, this is a really good alternative. It is bitter, to be sure, but yeah, I definitely support this product.
So with the jet lag temporarily defeated, we're ready to head back to Sensoji Temple to explore some of the nearby shops. Now yes, this is one of the most touristy spots in Tokyo, but if you love matcha, it's absolutely worth it. You'll find everything here, from traditional tea to some of the most experimental matcha creations in all of Japan, including something I've been wanting to try for a long time, matcha beer.
All right, so make sure not to spill the matcha beer on the matcha merchandise. That would be not good. Okay, so we just got some matcha beers. We're transitioning from the afternoon to the evening time. So I think matcha beer is a good, kind of a good off-ramp from our caffeine to our alcohol for the evening. So we just got these matcha beers and now we are headed into town. Okay, so now we are switching from liquids to solids. This is a matcha dango. So this is a sweet rice cake, basically. I think it's pretty similar to mochi. And then they cover it with this sweet soy sauce. And then she topped it with some delicious matcha powder. So we're keeping with the matcha theme here. That's really good. Really hits the spot.
As the sun set on our first day, even all the matcha in Tokyo couldn't keep us awake. We crashed in a capsule hotel, recharged just enough, and got ready for round 2 of our matcha marathon. In the morning, I had to check in on the 6 kilos of green tea I'd brought into the country, but that's a story for another video. Knowing that my baby was safe, I could head out into the town for another day of matcha-fueled action. All right, so it's our first morning here in Japan. We have a lot of matcha places to check out today, but first, we have to make a quick stop to 7-Eleven. Japanese convenience stores like 7-Eleven are a staple on these trips, providing just about everything you need when you're on the go, and they're conveniently located on nearly every street corner around Tokyo. So here we have the different types of onigiri. So this is my favorite little snack in Japan. This is basically like a giant triangle sushi. And this one's kelp flavored, for example, and basically you tear off this paper and then you can combine the seaweed and the rice together so the seaweed stays crispy, the rice stays fresh, right until the moment you're ready to eat it. So I'm gonna grab a few of these for my breakfast. Okay, so this is another one of my favorites. Keeping with the triangle theme, we have these pyramids of edamame, or salted soybeans. So you get your protein in for the day. This is another go-to of 7-Eleven. And I think you can even microwave them right in the bag here. And then you peel these tabs here and then they're ready to eat. This is the famous lemon vitamin drink that I'm going to be getting. Got a little vitamin C, a little electrolytes before you head out for the day. Let's see, I think we also have some... Where is it? Ah, here. The classic Kari Sweat. Onigiri, edamame, electrolytes. Everything you need to survive a matcha marathon, courtesy of 7-Eleven. We were now ready to take on Shibuya. All right, everybody, we just pulled into Shibuya Station. We're gonna check out the crossing, the famous crossing, and then we're gonna go to do a tea tasting at Sakurai. So this is not the main crossing. This is just a small crossing on the way to the main crossing. Now this is the main crossing. Up to 3,000 people can cross here on a single light, making it the busiest pedestrian crossing in the world. So I'm going to attempt to do something that I'm pretty sure no one has attempted before, or at least I hope not. I'm going to make a matcha in the Shibuya crossing. So this is the busiest pedestrian intersection in the world, and I'm going to see if I can whisk up a matcha by the time I get to the end of it. So right here, my little station, I am using the Shanoka Yabukita matcha. I'm going to use cold water. I don't have hot water right now, but it'll have to do. So first, I'm going to take my whisk out. Actually, get a nice little backdrop here. So first I'm going to make the paste, and this is a good way to smooth out the clumps. Because you can see the clumps now and make sure that they're gone before you add the rest of the water. Once you add the rest of the water, it's going to be too late. So, put some matcha here, ready. And once this light goes, that's my time. So let me make sure everything's prepared. Throw everything in the bag. And then, it's time light hits. The clock starts. All right, here we go. This nice foam on it here. It's harder with the cold water. Now, I'm going to keep walking backwards through this busy intersection until you guys hit the subscribe button. So please, for my own safety, make sure that you're following us as we continue our journey through Japan. Tokyo is just the beginning. We'll be exploring the most famous matcha regions around Japan. Uji, Yame, Shizuoka, Kagoshima, to find the very best matcha for neoteas.com. Now let's get back to our matcha marathon. On our way to Sakurai in Omotesando, we walked through the coolest Saturday market in the middle of Tokyo. There were vendors selling all sorts of Japanese products, wasabi, sweet potatoes, and tea. Guys, the craziest thing just happened. We were at a farmer's market here in Tokyo, and we ran into one of the tea farmers that we work with. And I was saying, I was just in line to buy a sweet potato, and I see the tea packs over there. He goes, "Yes, that's green tea." And I said, "Yeah, it's in Koan. Like we know the farmer." And he says, yeah, it's in Koan. And he points to the guy. And then I meet this farmer that I met with back in 2019. Unfortunately, there was a language barrier. We don't have Agnese with us to translate, so it was a little awkward. But I think he was happy to see us, and he offered us some nice Holjigen matcha, so roasted rice tea. Roasted rice with roasted tea leaves and some sencha as well. So I mean, these crazy things, like we do the farmer visits, but then occasionally we just run into them in the wild, and that was one of those. I wish I was more prepared, but it's like I never thought that would happen, so I was just completely caught off guard. Hopefully we handled the situation okay, but yeah, I definitely wish I had a business card or something to share with him, but that's how it goes sometimes. Masuda-san was the first farmer to introduce me to Holjigen matcha, as I sat and drank tea with him at his home in Shizuoka. So it was a fun, full-circle moment to buy the Holjigen matcha from him 7 years later at a farmer's market in Tokyo. So the first stop of our day is Sakurai Tea Experience in Omotesando. While it's not technically a matcha shop, they do serve matcha here, so I thought I would add it to the list. This is hands down the best tea shop I visited in Tokyo, and they offer multi-course tea tastings. The tasting is a bit pricey, but well worth it for the amount of different teas you get to try and the amount of time you get to stay and enjoy. The highlight is this tasting of Gyokuro, considered to be the highest quality leaf tea in Japan. Similar to matcha, this tea is shaded before the harvest to bring out its sweet and savory flavors. It has the umami flavor of matcha, but it's sweeter and more refined. If you love the taste of matcha, this might be a good bridge into the world of leaf tea. Make sure that you reserve a spot at Sakurai in advance because they will book up. It's a cozy little tea shop, but there's not that many seats. After Sakurai, we were starting to get a bit hungry, so we stopped by a cozy little cafe. So this is the matcha sparkling. Doesn't taste very matcha-y, actually. Not a ton of power in here, but it's a little sweet, it's refreshing, it's quite nice. Actually, it's the perfect pairing for this matcha croissant. You know, it's actually really good. So they make the matcha into the dough, and there's actually an azuki bean filling. So this is sweetened bean paste. It's a great addition to a matcha croissant. And they mix the matcha into the dough itself. So it's not just sprinkled on top, it's actually mixed into the dough. So these matcha croissants are very good, but the question is, are they approved by my French colleague? There you go, sir.
Okay, so as you can hear, it's mild beans. Very crispy, so that's a good start. Sorry, 10 out of 10.
Awesome.
Amazing.
All right. In Omotesando, we also hit my all-time favorite matcha spot in Tokyo, but I'll save that for the end. We'll skip that for now and head out to Ginza to meet up with Oliver and hit the third matcha spot on our list.
Hello, this is Oliver from Neoteas. Today we are in Atelier Matcha. So Pele's actually will pick out, so he's already in line, as you can see. We are chasing the best matcha of Japan in Tokyo as well. So Atelier Matcha, even if it's a French name, we try if it's on the level of the best matchas you can get here in Japan.
After waiting in line for a bit, we had some time to look at the menu, and the more we looked at, the more we wanted to get. Okay, so we're outside Atelier Matcha right now, and we're basically gonna order everything in the store. So we're getting matcha shots, we're getting 4 different types of matcha desserts, hojicha latte, matcha latte. It's gonna be a good time. Let's go. If you love matcha desserts, Atelier Matcha is the spot for you. They offer the most indulgent matcha treats we had on our entire trip to Japan, and we had a lot. And they also offer matcha floats and shakes as well to satisfy your sweet tooth. We wanted to start off with the matcha shots and work our way to the desserts. So we just did a matcha flight, so matcha tasting of 3 different matcha shots. They're all different, all of them blends, so a blend of different cultivars. The first one here. Yeah, to me this has a little bit of astringency, so a little bit dry, and it has a tiny bit of this roast, so this hika or this roasted aroma. This one here. This one's much smoother. A little bit of this like marine or seaweedy flavor profile is coming through. Then we go for the third one. So this one's definitely the boldest, the most umami. Some of those seaweed characteristics are coming through as well. So this one, boldest, most umami. This one I would say has the most of that marine flavor characteristic. This one is probably the most astringent. It's lighter, less full-bodied, and it has a little bit of roast to it. Then we attack the matcha gâteau. This looks like a cake, but it's really more of a matcha ganache, a super sweet matcha paste with tons of air whipped into it to make it light and fluffy.
So good. So good.
Really, really good. Really, really good. Next, we dove into the matcha mont blanc.
Okay, you guys have to try this. So actually, this crème de marron is like, you have to eat it, but like the bottom is like a milkshake.
After a full day of matcha, sometimes you want a break. That's where hojicha comes in. Unlike matcha, which is made from young, shaded tea leaves, hojicha is made from roasted tea leaves. That roasting gives it a deep, warm flavor, almost like a hot chocolate. It's lower in caffeine, so it's perfect later in the day. If you want to try it yourself, we found an amazing hojicha powder in Japan, and I'll link that below too. Now the sun was setting on our second day in Tokyo, and the city was just beginning to light up. A strange series of events involving a few canceled reservations and a love hotel landed us at a curious sight. Okay, so now we are actually at an Italian-themed wine bar in the middle of Tokyo. We are drinking Sapporo, so this is a well-known Japanese beer. But actually the owner of the restaurant has been to Italy many times, and he actually worked at a restaurant in Rome 35 years ago. So and we're talking a little bit about Italy. Yeah. Not something I was expecting to see in Tokyo, but here we are, after the end of a long day. After a little aperitivo, we walked over to our shabu shabu place for some dinner and our last matcha treat of the day, a matcha ice cream. Then we had a tough decision to make. Go to sleep at a reasonable hour or stay out until 2 a.m. On our third and final day in Tokyo, we had to catch a train to Shizuoka to meet with some of our tea producers, which was perfect because the 4th matcha spot on our list is right in the train station, the Ippodo Marunouchi location. This is a good spot for tea purists, and if you like drinking matcha straight, I can recommend it. You can even get my all-time favorite tea here, which is Gyokuro, served hot or iced. The location is super convenient if you want to grab some tea for your Shinkansen journey, or if you want to try some on the way to the Imperial Palace. If you're making matcha for plain drinking like this, you really want to make sure you're going for high quality. Of course, after many sourcing trips to Japan, we know exactly what to look for when it comes to flavor. So if you want to try all of our top picks, you can find them here. They're all produced without the use of pesticides or chemicals, and they're smooth enough to drink plain, but of course they also work well in lattes. Okay, so we're going to get to my pick for the all-time favorite tea shop in Tokyo, but first, I think we should go through a few honorable mentions. First, we have Ippuku in Matcha, which offers some great matcha desserts, including a matcha cheesecake. This one is also a short walk from the Tokyo train station and the Imperial Palace if you want to work it into your itinerary. Another honorable mention is Suzuki-en Asakusa. the place offering the famous super strong matcha gelato. You can also get matcha lattes here, and I think it's worth emphasizing that Asakusa is really a key stopover if you're a matcha lover in Tokyo. Not only do you have Hatoya Asakusa and Suzuki-en here, but also a ton of matcha-themed desserts to try on the shopping streets around Sensoji. Don't miss the Matcha Experience store where we got to try the matcha beer, and also so many other stores we just don't have the time to mention. In addition to Asakusa, Shibuya and Ginza are other main hubs for matcha shops. I created a map of the top matcha spots in Tokyo, and there are some clusters around these areas, so you can hit a bunch in the same day. If you want to download this map for yourself and plan out your own matcha marathon, you can find the link in the description below. But now, let's get to my favorite cafe of them all. I know it may be one of the most popular, but the Matcha Tokyo lives up to the hype. There are 5 locations around Tokyo, and 4 of them are located within this area between Shibuya and Shinjuku. We especially like this location in Omotesando because the neighborhood was so calm, and there are plenty of other cool shops along Cat Street and in Harajuku.
All right, so we are at the Matcha Tokyo, 100% organic matcha, and we got a coconut matcha float. So this is a, arigato. Look what just came. So this is the classic matcha ice cream. 2 scoops, and then this is actually coconut ice cream mixed into a matcha latte. So she was very clear on this. We have to stir this before we eat it, and then just stir up the latte. And I think I'll just do a little taste of the matcha itself. Oh my god, yeah, that's really good. Really, really good. That did not disappoint. Yeah, it's like super rich and umami, actually. I was not expecting this. Coconut ice cream is fantastic. This is a treat.
What I liked about this place is how strong the matcha was. If you're a true matcha lover, the last thing you want is a watery latte. After trying pretty much every type of matcha food around Tokyo, what I liked most were the ones that found a way to introduce sweetness without compromising on the matcha itself. This coconut matcha float was so indulgent and satisfying, but I still felt like I was drinking a strong matcha from a good source. Speaking of source, we're heading out into tea country next to meet with our producers. All it takes is a 2-hour bullet train from Tokyo, and we're in Shizuoka, Japan's secret tea capital. After spending the night, we're recharged and ready to go. Normally, hotel breakfasts offer a pretty dismal tea selection, but here in tea country, you get to choose from 5 different types of loose-leaf Japanese green tea. There's hojicha, made from roasted tea leaves, genmaicha, made by combining tea leaves with toasted rice, fukumushi sencha, which is a longer steamed green tea, kukicha, which is made from the stems of the tea plant, and of course, sencha, the most popular type of tea in Japan. I'll grab some of my personal favorite, fukumushi sencha, and then brew it up with this hot water dispenser. This small pot of tea is a great way to begin each morning here in Shizuoka, looking out onto the city and collecting ourselves before each farm visit. Shizuoka is a mid-sized city with almost 700,000 people, and on a clear day, you can see Mount Fuji on the horizon. Although it doesn't get many tourists, there's a lot of business here, and after coming many times on sourcing trips, there's a certain bustle to the city I'm starting to enjoy. Today, we're headed out to Makinohara, a plateau between Shizuoka City and Hamamatsu, to meet with one of the producers we work with. It doesn't take much driving in this area before you're swimming in a sea of tea fields.
So, William, how old do you think these
Tea plants?
tea plants are?
So, what separates Japanese tea from Chinese tea is they actually like the tea plants to remain young. So they consider the prime yield between 6 and 20 to 25 years. So unfortunately, when these tea plants reach about 25 years old, they're gonna rip them out and replant new ones. So these are actually probably quite young right here. It's a little bit sad, right? It makes you kind of reflect on your own mortality. Is 25 the peak? Is it all downhill from there?
I can confirm it's all down.
Guys, it's over for me.
Man.
I'm a dead tea plant.
With so many tea fields all around us, we were starting to get a bit impatient, so we pulled the car over and checked them out.
All right, so we are here in Shizuoka. We just pulled over on the side of the road, and you can see these beautiful tea plants here. It's definitely early spring, as you can tell, because there's some beautiful flowers growing. The teas aren't quite budding yet, but I think in a couple of weeks you'll start to see these green little sprouts here. But just a really beautiful setting, really getting us in the mood to visit a farm.
Today, we'll be meeting with the president, Tsuyomi Masuda-san, who is now leading 5 generations of tea production in Makinohara. His family established this business at the end of the Edo period, and they were one of the pioneers exporting Japanese green tea to the world back in 1991. In 2015, they were awarded the Emperor's Cup, the most prestigious award in Japanese agriculture. He's the one that produces our latte matcha, a more inexpensive matcha that works perfectly in matcha lattes. After tasting a ton of matcha latte powders, we found that the ones from Masuda-en had the best flavor, color, and consistency, but more on that later. Okay, so we are at the field of Masuda-en, and if you look over here, these are called boso fans. So these are circulating warm air onto the tea plants. This is very important here in Shizuoka. So we're in early March right now, so it's still getting quite cold, especially in the nighttime, and the buds are just starting to come up. So you have these really tiny little buds, super sensitive to frost, and you need to make sure to keep them warm, otherwise the frost is going to destroy them before they even get a chance to produce great tea. So the farmers just told us that the buds are just starting to come up, and they just fired up these fans here. So as you know, hot air rises, and they're pushing that hot air back onto the tea plants to keep them warm. We spent the morning with Masuda-san as he showed us around his tea fields, and one of his latest projects is growing more Tsuyu Hikari tea plants. Just like wine is broken down into different varietals, tea is broken down into different cultivars, or cultivated varieties. Because these varieties are spread through clippings and not seeds, the crops are genetically identical. They share the same flavor profiles, preferred growing conditions, and harvest times. This is very helpful for tea farmers, as they can treat the rows of tea bushes almost as one plant and harvest them all at the same time. The cultivar Yabukita has dominated tea production in Japan, especially here in Shizuoka. It's tougher and more frost resistant, so it can withstand the colder spring months of central Japan. The only downside is it tends to produce a little bit more bitterness in the flavor. This is why for premium sencha, gyokuro, and matcha, producers will often use one of the milder cultivars like okumidori, saimidori, asatsuyu, etc. Recently, there's been a push in Shizuoka to grow more of the Tsuyu Hikari cultivar. Tsuyu Hikari also offers a strong resistance to frost, but it also has some other benefits as well. It has a greater resistance to diseases like anthracnose, and it can be harvested earlier. In addition to this, Tsuyu Hikari brews up a brighter green liqueur and offers a smoother sweetness with a unique aromatic note. Although around 70% of all the tea produced in Japan is Yabukita, it does seem that there are some challengers coming for the crown. Masuda-san recently replaced a Yabukita field over here to make room for Tsuyu Hikari. The plants are only around a year old, but in 3 to 5 years they will start to be harvested and produce delicious cups of green tea. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. This looks exactly like kabuse netting used to make gyokuro or kabuseicha or matcha, but it's actually not. There's a key difference here, and that's that this is much lighter and it allows light to go through. So this is not going to be a shaded tea, actually. This is just kept under this netting to keep this environment extra warm so the tea plant flushes earlier. So next month this is going to be ready to harvest, and they're doing a special event here called the Tsuyu Hikari Picnic. So it's a celebration of the Tsuyu Hikari cultivar that's well known in this area. And they have 150 people. They come with their families. They do the hand picking here at Masuda-en, and then they actually make the fresh shincha, so the new tea, the fresh harvest of the year. And they have a nice picnic together with this new shincha tea. So this is just kept artificially warm, you could say, so that you can harvest it earlier. While these tea fields are beautiful, the real magic happens in the factory. And today, we're getting the VIP tour. Sanitation is extremely important in these tea production facilities. So in addition to wearing these hairnets and gowns, we will also enter through an air shower to remove particles of dust before entering into the production floor. We won't want anything getting into these bags other than delicious tea. First, we got a glimpse of the cold storage facility, and you can already see what a large operation this is. With clients in 20 countries, Masuda-en has become one of the country's largest exporters of tea. So this whole building right here is basically just a giant fridge. So this is the cold storage for Masuda-en. They keep the aracha and the middle finished teas. They keep them stored in here. And then when the orders come in, they're going to bring them out of the cold storage. They're going to finish them in the factory, and then they're going to ship them out. So this is kind of more of a long-term storage.
So it's completely automated. You put the order in over here, and then it will bring the corresponding boxes down. More on the way.
Next, we're going to head to where the leaves are being processed. After going through initial steaming and drying, the parts of the leaf can be separated. This bag here has been filled with tea stems that have been sorted out. You won't find these stems in premium teas like Gyokuro, but that doesn't mean that they're not full of potential. They can be used to make a delicious kukicha, or stem tea. The stems contain only 1/3 the caffeine of the tea leaves, but they're higher in minerals, making kukicha a great tea for the late afternoon or evening.
So we are now in the roasting room. There was actually a big aroma change. So over there was a little more vegetal. Here it's a little more roasted, a little more nutty. You can get aromas all around here. And the reason they were doing so much sorting earlier is because the different parts of the tea take different times to dry. So they're not making hojicha here, they're just drying the leaves for sencha so that they can be turned into a finished tea. And the stems and the older and the larger leaves and the smaller leaves all dry at different times. So they need to be separated over there, brought into here, and then brought down to their final moisture content.
It was on this trip that I really got an appreciation for the drying process of tea. I always thought of it as more of a formality, a step that reduces moisture so the leaves can be stored and brewed properly. But it's so much more than that. In fact, so much of the flavor of a tea comes from this drying process. By applying gentle heat over a long period of time, you can slightly cook the tea leaves, mellowing out some of the sharper taste characteristics and giving them a more mature flavor profile. If you take a sample of the tea before and after drying, you'll notice a difference right away. The dried tea leaves are much more fragrant, sweet, and slightly nutty. It's in this step that the leaves really become tea. This is even important when it comes to matcha. There's this rare tasting note in matcha called hika, a slightly nutty or roasted flavor profile. It comes not from the tea leaves or from the grinding, but this gentle heat applied to the tencha leaves during the drying process. Now we're going to put on our most fashionable pair of shoes and head into the matcha milling area. There are actually 4 different methods for milling matcha, and this is the most modern. This is called a jet mill, and it can produce up to 200 kilos of matcha per hour. Inside this chamber, the tencha particles are blasted with pressurized air and whipped into a vortex. The particles collide with one another and break into these smaller and smaller pieces until they're eventually small enough to pass through a filter. Even though this mill is fast, it's able to produce a super fine powder, around 10 to 15 microns. A human hair is 70 to 100 microns, and a red blood cell is around 8 microns. The gold standard for matcha is considered to be 5 to 10 microns, but as long as it's less than 20 microns, the texture is still quite smooth. Over 20 microns begins to feel gritty, and less than 10 starts to form clumps, as the static begins to stick together the small particles. And because the matcha particles are combined with each other, they don't come into contact with other surfaces, which is another advantage of this jet mill. The finished matcha will then be taken out and weighed into these 20-kilo boxes. Here you can get a closer look at the matcha powder and how fine it is. For plain drinking matcha, you may want to use the 5 to 10 microns produced by a stone mill, but as they explained to us, the 10 to 15 micron grind actually works perfectly for latte matcha. Milk is thicker than water, so it's more forgiving of a larger particle size. Because the particles are heavier, they actually mix better into the latte, rather than being trapped in the foam. Also, the clumps are harder to deal with when the milk is mixed in, so you want a less clumpy matcha with a larger particle size. But time to put our mouth where our money is and taste the latte matcha powder fresh off the line. This matcha is made from the second harvest, so you won't get the intense umami flavor you'd find with first harvest ceremonial grade matcha. Still, the color is very green, the texture is fine, and the flavor is smooth and vegetal. What you want to avoid with these latte matchas is that dry, slightly woody flavor that tastes like chopsticks, and there's none of that with this one. Even though they're able to produce relatively large quantities of this matcha, they're still struggling to keep up with demand. The producers told us that they're not taking on any new clients and are instead focusing on maintaining their relationships with longtime clients like us. We've had the great privilege of working with Masuda-en for almost a decade now, and they still produce some of our most popular teas. If you want to try the matcha or bancha teas from Masuda-en, we'll put the link in the description below. After a successful visit to Masuda-en, we're heading back to Shizuoka for the evening. One of the things that surprised us about Shizuoka is the impressive food scene. In addition to producing tea, Shizuoka is also one of the best regions in Japan for seafood and for wasabi. We also found some great ramen and tempura topped with matcha salt. Shizuoka is very proud of its tea-making heritage, and if you look closely, you can see it in just about everything, from the tea selection at the hotel to the matcha food products around the city. These little touches really made the trip fun and let us know that the tea industry here is alive and well. It was important to get some rest on this trip. Those 7 a.m. wake-ups seemed to get earlier and earlier, but luckily the hotel tea was always there to bring me back to life each morning.
Okay, so we are here at Sato-en, the second farmer of the trip. This is actually the first tea farm I ever visited, and this is the maker of the Yamaga no Sato, one of my all-time favorite teas.
A lot had changed since my first visit to Sato-en 7 years ago. Now, Japanese matcha had become one of the most sought-after food products on the planet, and the industry was facing a new set of challenges.
Okay, everybody, we're here at the fields of Sato-en, and you can see behind me is this beautiful setting right here. We're up in the mountains of Shizuoka, and actually over here to my right is an abandoned tea field. So the Minister of Agriculture was here last month to discuss what to do with some of these abandoned tea fields. This might be a little bit dangerous, but I'm going to try to walk the plank so we can get a closer look. So normally tea fields are organized into these neat rows, and this is from the harvesting machine, but you can see here they're much more wild. So the bushes are starting to clump together, they're growing a little bit taller, a little bit bushier as well. And you can see they're very unmanicured. So this right here is actually an abandoned tea field. So no one owns this land, or at least no one's tending to it. So this is a big problem right now in Japan. As the farmers are getting older, there's no one to take over the business, so sometimes they're just leaving the tea fields here. So right now, the Japanese government is having a conversation as to what to do with these abandoned tea fields.
It was hard to imagine that with so much demand for matcha, tea fields like this could be abandoned, but it emphasizes the multifaceted nature of the matcha shortage. It's not just about bottlenecks in grinding or lack of raw leaf material, but also a shortage of labor. In the year 2000, there were as many as 53,000 tea farmers in Japan, and now there are estimated to only be around 12,000. Of the remaining tea farmers, 56% of them are now over the age of 65. These steep tea terraces in the mountains are the first casualty, as they're incredibly difficult and even dangerous to manage. It was surreal being back at the same tea fields I visited 7 years ago, and already seeing that so much had changed. Even with a lot of investment going into production, the labor shortages were becoming even more noticeable. Driving around Shizuoka, I recognized a lot of the roads, but not the fields. They were overgrown and abandoned. This field holds a special place in my heart, as the first tea field I ever visited in Japan, and the place where one of my favorite teas is produced. But unfortunately, the future of these mountain tea fields is uncertain.
All right, successful day of filming. Now we're heading to the factory. It's raining a little bit, actually. I was not expecting that. And Agnese is a little bit upset with us, so I think it's going to be a long ride home.
Look at her.
One of the reasons we wanted to take a look at the factory is to check out the steaming machines. What makes Japanese green tea different from Chinese green tea is the fact that it's steamed rather than pan-fired. This imparts a greener, slightly seaweedy flavor on the tea. The Yamaga is a fukumushicha, or deep steam tea, which means that it's steamed for a longer time. Normally, the tea leaves are steamed for 30 to 60 seconds. If it's steamed for less time, it's called asamushi, and if it's steamed for longer, it's called fukumushi. This longer steaming process breaks down the cell membranes of the tea leaf, and as a result, fukumushi sencha takes on this vibrant green color. The flavor also becomes smoother, but what makes the Yamaga unique is that it also picks up these fruity notes of lychee berry, particularly when you cold brew it. Still to this day, I don't know how the producers at Sato-en pull it off. I guess some mysteries are best left unsolved. If you want to try this tea for yourself, you can find it on our website, neoteas.com.
So we're here in the tencha factory of Sato-en right now, and the producer just told us that when they're producing tencha, so the initial product to make matcha, the caffeine is actually separated from the tea leaves and then it collects down here. So this is pure caffeine right here. These are caffeine crystals collecting on the floor. Oh man,
You do not want to mess around with this. Matcha is higher in caffeine than most people think. There can be 34 milligrams of caffeine in a single gram of premium matcha, and many people use around 4 grams in their daily latte. This means that if you're not careful, matcha lattes can have as much caffeine as coffee. Seeing this dust coating the outside of the factory should be a good reminder of just how much caffeine is in matcha. So after another successful visit, we headed back for our last night in Shizuoka. After just passing through this city so many times on previous trips, it was nice to get to spend a little more time here and really get to know the place. We returned to one of our pastimes, looking through 7-Eleven to find the craziest thing to make Arthur eat.
And my mouth is just gonna blow up.
What is it?
I don't know, actually, it looks like a, well, something a bit spicy. You want to have one as well?
I'm gonna have dinner in that. Wow. What is it, by the way? Are you filming?
Looks like something spicy. That's why I brought this as well to...
Do you even know what that is?
Oh no.
No, what is it? No way. No way.
Okay, Agnese?
Spicy Haribos.
Okay.
No, it's no. It already looks. I'm so sorry. I just washed my hands. You can take it.
Oh, it's not bad.
I can have it. No, it's not my dinner.
It's not spicy at all. It's not spicy at all.
This was false advertising.
No, it's not spicy at all.
Well, that was a little bit of a disappointment, but don't worry, we'll get him later on in the trip when we make him eat natto. In the morning, we hit the road to visit our third and final farmer in Shizuoka. Osada-en is a farm we visited back in 2019, and since then, they've really been able to capitalize on the matcha boom. Led by Natsumi Osada-san, this family-owned business has produced great tasting tea in this area since 1947, and now they're scaling up. The reason they're able to grow without compromising on quality is because they work with small-scale tea gardens in the mountains of Shizuoka. Last time, we got to visit the so-called organic village in Isagawa, a group of farmers committed to growing tea without the use of pesticides or chemicals. Osada-en combines the quality and the care of a small tea plantation with the precision and reliability of a larger producer. When I asked how many of these ishiusu or stone mills they had in their facility, they said they have 27, and they're running nearly 24 hours a day to keep up with demand. This may sound like a lot of matcha, but these mills can only produce 15 to 20 grams per hour. The stone ground matcha is the best option for usucha or plain drinking matcha. When you're mixing with water, you're a little more sensitive to the texture, and you want it to be as smooth as possible. The particles are also lighter and flatter in shape, so they remain in suspension longer, and they can even help produce a better foam. For their less expensive matcha, they use a bead mill. This is a metal machine that spins small metal beads around quickly to grind the matcha in a powder. This will produce a slightly coarser texture, but it's 1,000 times faster than the stone mill, producing 15 kilograms of matcha per hour. But we weren't only here to learn about matcha mills, we were on a mission. We needed to find a stone ground Okumidori matcha from Osada this year, so we headed to the tasting room to compare a few samples. For the Osada Okumidori, we're looking for a smooth, stone ground matcha that offers a nice hika aroma. For this tasting, we'll measure out 1 gram of powder. You can tell it's 1 gram because 1 yen coin is almost exactly 1 gram, so they're often used as counterweights for tea tastings. While matcha is normally whisked into a thick foam to create a smoother texture, for a tasting, they usually prepare the tea without foam. This is so that there's nothing to mask the imperfections of the tea. If there's a deficiency in the taste of this matcha, we want to know about it. But there were no deficiencies in this tea. It was super smooth, very green, and I could really get that nutty or roasted finish that we were looking for. They explained to us that there's normally a trade-off between this super green color and this more mellow, nutty flavor because it has to do with the heat applied during the drying process. But this Osada Okumidori matcha seemed to offer both a nutty flavor and a jade green color, especially when compared to a typical Yabukita matcha. So it looks like we got what we came here for, but the guys at Osada-en were eager to show us some of their new toys. They just purchased a Tensha facility in town, so we all hopped in the car to check it out. Well, almost all of us. Okay, so we're just about ready to tour the facilities at Osada, but we hit a little bit of a hiccup, and we're running a little bit late because our CEO is stuck in the bathroom. They have this automatic door that apparently he wasn't able to figure out. So now he had to call for reinforcements, and yeah, I think he should be out soon. And then we're ready to go. One of the coolest parts of our visit to Shizuoka was getting to tour this brand new Tencha facility. This was Osada N's answer to the matcha shortage, a $1.5 million investment into state-of-the-art machinery. These machines have never been used, and they'll soon be tested with this year's tea harvest. You'd be surprised enough to learn that it takes this entire facility just to produce matcha powder. But what's even more surprising is that all this machinery just produces tencha, the leaves used to make matcha. They will then need to be ground at a separate facility. This new investment should allow them to produce an additional 30 tons of tencha per year, and because there's very little weight lost going from tencha to matcha, you can expect an additional 30 tons of matcha supply coming from just this facility alone. There was only 5,336 tons of matcha produced in Japan in 2024, and even less in 2025, so this is actually a meaningful chunk of the world's matcha production capacity. It was both fascinating and scary to see the matcha boom firsthand. How much investment goes into increasing the supply, and how much is at risk for this fragile industry? While matcha production is rising in some areas, it's shrinking in others, and almost nowhere is it just staying the same. With the global fame of matcha, no farmer is unaffected. Even the producers of leaf tea like kabusecha have had to drastically change their business model. Every plant used to make these shaded teas could also be used to make more matcha, so farmers now need to take pre-orders. Producing matcha seems safe to them, as there will always be a buyer. Unfortunately for lovers of these premium leaf teas, they're becoming harder and harder to find.
All right, so that was a very successful visit at Osada, and we also got these nice parting gifts.
Yes!
So, this is actually a narashiko, so a fermented Japanese tea, bottled and chilled. So, I'm excited to try this.
Yes. So,
Oh yeah, it's really good.
is it well approved?
It's definitely well approved. It tastes almost like there would be some sweetness to it, like you get a little bit of the strawberry, but obviously there's no sugar added, so it's just like really cool, refreshing tea with like a hint of strawberry almost.
All right, and now we're on our way to
Lunch.
yes.
We never found our lunch place, but what we found instead was even better, a roadside tea shop. We pulled over here when we saw the massive Kyushu teapot on the side of the road, but we were treated to a surprise tea tasting. This store seemed to have everything. Packs of loose leaf tea made by growers nearby, teapots, and even tea food pairings. This tea tasting made for a great final send-off. Nowhere else but in Shizuoka could you find a tea store of this size just sitting on the side of the road. It shows that not only is there great pride for the tea industry, but also a great interest. While much of Japan had become focused on matcha, it seemed that Shizuoka had still remained a leaf tea stronghold. While this region will face many challenges in the next few years, the producers here possess an unmatched level of ingenuity and optimism, which is a perfect fit for the current moment. And so we head off to Kyoto, eager to begin the next part of our journey, but sad to leave behind Shizuoka, Japan's true tea capital.
So, we are running a little bit late right now. We are in our hotel in Kyoto, trying to gather up some last minute items for our farm visit at Nakai.
And we're late. Are we late,
Let's
Oliver?
pop this open real quick, we can get a little
I'm
view.
not late, I'm finished.
Believe it or not, no green tea in the hotel.
So we had to.
Double bag it.
Look at him. He's
I'm
drinking.
suffering right now, guys. I'm really suffering.
How do you like the
I
microplastic?
hope you appreciate the sacrifices I'm making for you. This is really not so good.
Welcome to the chaos.
On our first morning in Kyoto, we took the train over to nearby Wazuka. While we ride the train in, I think it's important to explain the subregions of Kyoto and why they're so important within the tea industry. When we say Kyoto, we're not only referring to the former imperial capital city, but also the entire prefecture of Kyoto. This region only produces 3.5% of Japan's total tea, but what it lacks in quantity, it makes up for in quality. This region is considered to be the cradle of Japanese tea. Kozanji Temple in the Togano Mountains north of Kyoto is where Japan's first tea plants were cultivated in 1191. The shading technique was believed to have been discovered in Uji during the 16th century, and in 1738, the steaming and rolling technique used to make sencha was discovered in nearby Ujitawara. Finally, in 1835, Gyokuro was developed in Ogura and Hojicha around Kyoto in the 1920s. Since the 1500s, Uji has had the reputation for producing the best teas in Japan, but teas produced in smaller subregions like like Uji Towara and Wazuka can be sold as Uji-cha. Even though regions like Shizuoka and Kagoshima produce far more tea than Kyoto, it still remains the central hub for the tea trade, especially for matcha. Once a year, the Kyoto Tencha auction essentially sets prices for the entire matcha market. Farmers auction off tencha, or the dried leaves used to make matcha, and producers submit sealed bids in order to purchase it. From 2024 to 2025, we saw a 169% increase in first harvest tencha, which is the largest price shock in history, kicking off the global matcha boom. This may seem like a positive thing for the tea farmers, but the last thing an 800-year-old tea industry wants is rapid change. The matcha boom is bringing great uncertainty to farmers across Japan, especially in the historical prefecture of Kyoto. With increased demand, labor shortages, and now interruptions to global trade, this ancient tea industry is being tested. And we wanted to check in with all of our farmers to make sure that they're still able to produce that great tea that our customers can't get enough of. So here we are in Wazuka, a region south of Kyoto that produces the largest share of Uji-cha. We got picked up at the station, and just on the car ride over, you can already get a sense of why this region is so famous for tea. The rolling hills allow for tea plants to be grown in steep terraces, which is good for drainage, and it provides the tea plants with partial shade throughout the day. The soil here is rich and fertile, and with such a long history of tea production, the farming talent in this area is unmatched. We've been working with the Nakai family for almost 10 years now, and they produce some of our most popular matchas like the washimine. So we are here in Wazuka. It's a beautiful day right now. We're at the tea fields of the Nakai family. You can call this Nakai's Valley right in here. And actually what we're gonna do today is prepare a fresh matcha right here on the tea fields. So I have some equipment here. I got my chawan bowl. I have my Neo Chasen whisk. And I'm gonna improvise a little bit on the water because it's hard to get hot water out here. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to start with this beautiful matcha washimine. So you can see the color is super green. This is an okumidori matcha, grown without pesticides or chemicals. You can see we're on a Yabukita field right now. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to add about 2 grams. We're kind of improvising here because we don't have all of our equipment. Oh my gosh!
Oh my god!
So that is definitely way too much matcha, but we're just gonna go for it. So that's probably about 6 grams or so. I got my hotel water, natural mineral water from Kyoto. And what we're gonna do is first, because we're not sifting, we're gonna have to start with a paste here. So I'm just pouring a little bit of water, mix this into a paste. Again, this is way too much. Don't try this at home. But I have a lot of tea fans here with me, so it won't be wasted. So what this paste step does is make sure that I don't have any clumps in the matcha. You can see a beautiful green koicha here, and the chasen is just dripping. So now what we're going to do is add in the rest of the water, which I will do off screen. So whisk in quick zigzag motions using your wrist. There we go. Okay, perfect. Now comes the fun part. Super smooth. Definitely some vegetal notes going on here. A little bit of seaweed. But that's a good thing. One of the things that makes the Nakai family so unique is that they don't use pesticides or chemicals. A dirty secret about the tea industry is just how much chemicals are used on the tea plants, both to boost the nitrogen levels of the soil and also kill the insects that try to eat the tea leaves. Only 2 to 5% of Japanese teas are organic, making the Nakai family one of the rare few. If you look at the soil on a lot of conventional tea fields, you'll notice a lot of hard black earth, with nothing growing but the tea plants themselves. Contrast that with these organic tea fields out here, and you'll notice other plants and insects growing in between the rows. This creates a soft, spongy soil that retains water and also allows the roots of the tea plant to penetrate deeper into the earth and absorb more nutrients. A lot of people in the tea industry will say that the use of these chemicals is necessary in order to produce that umami flavor of a matcha, but we found a handful of farmers across Japan that are able to grow strong, flavorful tea plants without the use of pesticides or chemicals. The matcha produced by the Nakai family is good enough to compete with the top conventional matcha, and it's made with far less impact on the natural environment. So while it is difficult to find farmers in Japan that produce tea this way, it can be done, and we think that it's worth it. If you want to try some of the matcha produced by the Nakai family, we'll put a link to their tea in the description below. With such rapid change coming to this centuries-old industry, we can really see that farmers are under an enormous amount of pressure to keep up with rising demand without compromising on quality. And despite all of this, the farmers are still maintaining their commitment to growing tea without pesticides or chemicals. We admire their dedication, despite the uncertainty in front of them. As the sun sets over Kyoto, we make the long drive over to Tokoname to explore Japan's most famous teapot region. It was hard to believe that in the teapot capital of Japan, I was forced to brew tea like this at the hotel. They even had a perfectly good Tokoname Kyusu in the lobby, and there were moments where I thought about swiping it. As messy as this was, I was able to get my tea fix for the morning, as we woke up super early and met with Takada-san for our tour of a nearby teapot factory. Okay, so we're here now in Tokoname, Japan. This is the most famous town on earth for the Kyusu teapot. This is the iconic Japanese side-handle teapot that makes brewing much easier. And today, we're going to be touring a teapot factory to see how they're made. Located right next to Nagoya, Tokoname is known as one of the 6 ancient kilns of Japan, with production dating back to the 12th century. And now it accounts for 30 to 40% of the total teapot production in Japan. We visited a small studio in Tokoname that produces the red clay teapots we sell on our website, and we learned that great teapots begin with great clay. The clay in this region of Tokoname is renowned for its fine particle size, meaning it has a very smooth feel to it, perfect for teapots. While the clay is liquefied on the lower floor, the upper floor is where the real magic happens. So basically we have this beautiful Tokoname clay, super smooth, low porosity, and they actually filled these plaster molds with the clay. And if you look down here, so this is plaster. It has a very high porosity, so it's going to absorb the moisture from the clay, and that's going to pull the moisture out, so you go from very wet clay to very dry clay. And then what they're going to do is they're going to break these molds open, and that's how you get these. So these are slightly unfinished clay teapots. They have their shape, they just need their structure, and in the next step we're going to see how they remove some small imperfections, and then eventually they're going to make them. So there's a few different details of the teapot. You have the main body, then you have the handle. Those are the 2 biggest pieces. So what makes the Japanese teapot unique is that you have this side handle, which makes the pouring more fluid. You can just use a simple turn of the wrist. And then we have the lid, which we haven't seen yet, but then we also have the top to the lid. So this is where they're making the little top to the lid. These are the smallest parts of the teapot. But if you look at the finished teapots, they don't look like 4 separate pieces. They just look like 2. So behind me, Nakamura-san is hard at work turning those 4 pieces we saw before into 2 pieces. So if you look at this teapot, it's really seamlessly blended together. You know, the handle and the body of the teapot look like one piece. You really can't even see a seam here. It's so smoothly blended. So that's what Nakamura-san is working on. She's blending these pieces of the teapot together so that they look like one cohesive piece instead of 4 different pieces. So the 4 main pieces we saw before were the lid of the teapot, also the top of the lid, so this little ball right here, the handle, and then the body. And so this is the station where those 4 pieces come together to make 2, a lid and a body. After Nakamura-san has finished her work, the teapots will almost look completely done, but they need one finishing touch before they can be fired. At this station, the unfinished teapots need their final coating. This is not a dye, nor is it a glaze, but rather a superfine clay slip that is applied on the outside of the teapots. The particles in this coating are much finer than in the body of the teapot, so they can fill in the spaces and give the teapots a smooth finish. The coating is also higher in iron, so it gives the teapots their iconic red color. To dry them off and make sure there's no dripping, they will blast the teapots with pressurized air and leave them out to dry. Once they are dry, the teapots will be placed in an electric kiln and fired. The kiln needs to be heated gradually to avoid cracking and heat off residual moisture. Then it will eventually reach 1100 to 1200 degrees Celsius and the clay will harden into ceramic. The iron inside the clay will also oxidize during the firing process to deepen the red color. This Kyusu teapot has a number of features that make it the best tool for preparing Japanese tea. That side handle we saw earlier is hollow, so it stays cool to the touch, even when you're brewing hot tea. It also allows you to pour with more refined movements. Instead of tilting your whole arm, all it takes is a simple turn of the wrist. The teapot has a wide body which gives the tea leaves more space to expand and release their flavor into the water, which is why you'll get richer brews with a teapot than with a strainer. Finally, the teapot has a built-in mesh filter that automatically sifts out the leaves as you pour so they don't end up in your cup. Because of the low porosity, these teapots are more neutral, meaning they can be used for multiple types of teas without being seasoned. This makes the teapot perfect for beginners who want to upgrade from strainers but don't want to invest in too much specialty equipment. If you want to get your own red Kyusu teapot produced here in Tokoname, you can find it on our website, neoteas.com. While Tokoname produces some of the smoothest teapots in Japan, there's actually another famous region that prides itself in the exact opposite. To compare the two styles, we drove 2 hours from Tokoname to Shigaraki in Shiga Prefecture. Shigaraki is one of Japan's 6 ancient kilns, historic pottery centers recognized as Japanese heritage sites. On the list we have Tokoname, Shigaraki, Seto, Bizen, Tamba, and Echizen. Tokoname is known for this super smooth, naturally red clay with a high iron content, but the clay in Shigaraki is almost the exact opposite. Because Shigaraki is near Japan's largest lake, the clay here is much sandier, giving the teapots a rougher texture and a more rustic style. This rougher texture means that over time, the teapot will become seasoned with the flavor of tea and make each brewing more powerful. Shigaraki is also famous for tanuki, these raccoon dog figurines that take some getting used to. But we weren't here to see raccoons, we were here to see Sawa Hotsan, a legendary potter in Shigaraki. Sawa-san is a second-generation pottery master, and the Sawa Hotsan studio has been producing premium teaware since 1955. The souvenir I wanted most from my trip to Japan was the perfect teapot for brewing Gyokuro, considered to be the highest quality leaf tea in Japan. A normal teapot wouldn't cut it, because for Gyokuro, you really want to brew with a lot of leaves and a tiny amount of water, but Sawa-san may just have the perfect thing for that. He specializes in these shiboridashi, shallow teapots that are perfect for brewing up some of the best teas in Japan. Okay, so we are at the home of Sawa-san, the master potter from Shigaraki, and we're actually doing a tea tasting right now. So we poured a cup of hojicha, so this is a roasted tea right here, and it actually makes the perfect tea pairing for these sweets right here. So we have hojicha flavor, we have green tea flavored, this is azuki bean flavor, and I gotta say, I had a little bit of the azuki bean with the hojicha, and it was just incredible. So right now, we're doing a demonstration of the pottery making. Sawa-san is making these beautiful Shigaraki ware. So the typical style of this region, it's a little bit different than Tokoname. The clay is much rougher because there's a higher sand content. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's a little bit rougher. And it kind of creates this more natural look. So it's not super polished, it's just a little bit more natural. And this right here, the reason this teapot is so flat is it's actually a shiboridashi. So this is meant for preparing high-end teas like Gyokuro and Kabuse Sencha. And actually, normally you'd have the Kyusu teapot, which has this hollow side handle that stays cool when you're brewing with boiling water. But these premium Japanese green teas like Gyokuro and Kabuse Sencha, you actually use cooler water, so you don't need the side handle. You can just pour like this, and actually the word shiboridashi means to squeeze out. So what you're doing is you're brewing with a lot of leaves and a very small amount of water, and you're actually going to, this shiboridashi spreads out the leaves so they can all brew evenly, even with a smaller quantity of water. And then you're gonna just let it brew for 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes, and then you're just gonna pour it out. And because the leaves are so large, you don't need a super fine filter. You can use a more rudimentary filter. This one is just kind of a system of grooves here. And that's plenty to filter out these larger leaves used for Gyokuro. To make these delicate works of art, Sawa-san begins with clay from Shigaraki and throws it on his pottery wheel. As the wheel spins, he carefully centers the clay, shaping it into a low, wide form that will eventually become the body of the shiboridashi. Unlike a typical teapot, this vessel is intentionally kept shallow to allow the leaves to spread out evenly during brewing. Once the base is formed, he gently opens the clay up and pulls the walls inward, keeping them low and thin. This wide shape is essential for Gyokuro, where you want the maximum contact between the leaves and the water. Next, he refines the rim, shaping a subtle pouring edge directly into the body of the pot. He uses a small wooden tool to make sure the body of the teapot has the perfect width and there is just enough of a lip so he can fit the lid in perfectly. After making a few final inspections, he will cut the teapot off the wheel with a wire and set it aside. He will then carve the spout of the teapot by hand, using only his finger as a measurement guide. Instead of a separate filter, only a simple network of grooves will be used to filter out the leaves, while still maintaining the minimalist design of the shiboridashi. Once the form is complete, the piece is left to dry slowly before being trimmed, refined, and eventually fired in the kiln, where the unique Shigaraki clay develops its signature rustic texture. Sawa-san will then glaze some of his teapots to provide a smooth coating on the inside. Of course, there are advantages and disadvantages to this. You won't be able to season a glazed teapot because the tea isn't in contact with the clay directly, but it becomes more versatile so you can use it for many types of teas without impacting the flavor. It looks like we found what we were looking for, a teapot that can brew the perfect cup of Japanese green tea. If you want to get your own tea set from Sawa-san, we have a limited supply on our website, neoteas.com. This Shigaraki tea set comes with a shiboridashi teapot and 2 handmade tea cups. This set is the perfect gift for tea lovers, or, in my case, a gift to myself. After getting a few teapots here in Shigaraki, I now use them pretty much every day for my Gyokuro sessions. We had such a great visit to Shigaraki, and Sawa-san and his family could not have been more hospitable. But now it was time to see these teapots in action, and for that, Takada-san took us back to his home in Uji, where we joined him for a very special tea tasting. A tasting of 4 different teas that are all unique in their own ways. The first thing you notice when stepping into his tasting room isn't the tea, it's the aroma. Warm, toasty, and slightly sweet, coming from a small roaster gently heating tea leaves over a candle. In addition to producing a lovely aroma, it also creates one of the most unique hojicha I've ever tasted. Hojicha is a popular type of green tea in Japan, made by roasting tea leaves over an intense heat. Normally, this is done with large machines to create a uniform roast. The leaves are even separated by size and then recombined later because smaller leaves roast quicker. This hojicha is the complete opposite, beautifully imperfect. All you do is turn the leaves occasionally with a small stick. Some leaves burn, some leaves cook to a perfect golden brown, and others are virtually uncooked. This creates a broader spectrum of flavor profiles, from sharp and grassy to smoky, wooden, and everything in between. While most Japanese teas are celebrated for their green and vegetal flavors, the roasting process imparts a warmer taste onto the hojicha, with notes of caramel, chocolate, and coffee. This tea is lower in caffeine, and because the bitter catechins have been cooked out of the leaves, it can be prepared at a higher temperature without releasing too much bitterness. It was quite a cold day in Uji, so this was the perfect hot cup of tea to warm up with and begin our cozy little tea tasting. But the hojicha is just the beginning. What comes next is something Takada-san calls happy tea, a tea designed to change how you feel. Over the years, Takada-san discovered something surprising. Before any business deal, before any serious conversation, mood comes first. And this tea is how he transforms it, making his clients feel more energized, relaxed, and of course, happy. Okay, so we're at the home of Takada-san, and he just served us his famous happy tea. So this is a very small cup of super concentrated sencha. So he brews with 7 grams of leaves and just this small amount of water here to make a super concentrated flavor and also texture as well. So this tea is very thick, it's very flavorful, very strong in umami, and I think it's definitely making me very happy. But the secret is not just in how the tea is prepared, but the leaves themselves. For happy tea, you want this rich concentration of theanine and caffeine. Caffeine makes you feel alert and energized, while theanine makes you feel calm and relaxed. Both of these compounds together give you the calm, alert feeling that tea lovers can't get enough of. Theanine, which is found almost exclusively in tea, is thought to stimulate alpha brainwave activity, the same brainwaves stimulated during meditation. This puts the brain in a creative state, which is why this tea is perfect for long periods of work, study, and meditation. Theanine also creates the sweet and savory flavors in Japanese green tea. Theanine is an amino acid, and if it's in high enough concentrations, it can give the tea an umami flavor profile, almost like a rich soup broth. So the theanine in happy tea makes you happy for 2 reasons: the calm alert energy, but also the sweet and powerful flavor. But not all tea is created equal, and certain tea types have a higher theanine content than others. The main factor comes down to the nutrients in the soil and the shading of the tea. Theanine acts as a nutrient delivery system for the tea plant. helping transport nitrogen from the soil to fuel the growth of the tea leaves. This is why fertilization is so important for making rich, flavorful teas. While many producers turn to chemicals to enhance the nutrient content of the soil, the producers we work with use more natural methods, fueling the growth of the tea plants with organic compost rather than chemicals. The second factor in determining the L-theanine content of the tea leaves is the shading of the tea plants. When the tea leaves are exposed to sunlight, they begin to convert theanine into catechins as a protection against the UV light. These catechins are responsible for the bitter flavors of the tea, and if you're serving up happy tea, you want as little of these catechins as possible. This is why happy tea is only made from long shaded tea leaves like Gyokuro and Kabuseicha. By stretching these nets over the tea plant, the producer is able to block the sun from hitting the tea leaves and allow them to maintain more of their sweet and savory theanine. If the producer covers the tea plants for between 10 and 20 days, the tea is considered to be a Kabuseicha. And if the plants are covered for more than 20 days, they can be sold as Gyokuro, the most prized leaf tea in Japan. Gyokuro has a super rich umami character and no bitterness, and it's also incredibly high in caffeine, which makes it a good candidate for happy tea. Takada-san uses 7 grams of leaves and 15 milliliters of water to brew his happy tea, so each guest only gets about 10 milliliters of tea. The last few drops of this tea are the most flavorful because they've been in contact with the leaves for the longest time. So to keep things fair, he uses the alternate pouring method. This makes sure that each guest ends up with the same amount of flavor. Before you go thinking that this is wasteful, just know 2 things. First, there's more flavor in a few drops of this tea than there is in an entire cup of a typical green tea. You don't drink it all in one gulp, but rather just enough to coat the palate. You take the same amount of sips as you would with a regular cup, but the sips are much smaller. When you drink a tea like Gyokuro or Kabuseicha, it's not just about savoring the flavor, but also the texture of the tea as it glides over your tongue drop by drop. The other important thing to know is that these leaves can be reused a total of 5 times. The first brewing is going to be the sweetest and most energizing, but the second is still going to be one of the best cups of tea you'll ever have. By the 3rd, 4th, and 5th brewings, you end up with a tea that tastes just like a typical sencha, with these strong, steamed vegetable notes. Nothing exceptional, but still very enjoyable, right until the end. And finally, you can even eat the leaves when you're done with them. For this, Mr. Takada adds a single drop of soy sauce on each of the tea leaves. I found it pretty difficult to balance the leaves perfectly onto a toothpick to eat them, but after bringing the plate to my mouth, it was easy enough. The leaves don't taste like much, likely because all the flavor had been extracted into these 5 cups of tea, but it was a nice way to finish off the happy tea tasting and make sure nothing was wasted. So it may look like Takada-san is whisking up a nice bowl of matcha, but this is actually not matcha. In fact, it's not even a real tea. This powder is made from ground mulberry leaves, and it's a caffeine-free alternative to matcha. The leaves have a natural sweetness to them, and because the plant is lower in catechins, there is less bitterness than a typical low-grade matcha. Unfortunately, the flavor doesn't offer quite as much complexity as matcha. Matcha has a few main flavor profiles. There's umami, the savory or brothy characteristic we mentioned earlier, oika, the steamed vegetable or seaweed flavor, hika, the slightly nutty or roasted characteristic that comes from the drying process of the tea leaves, and amai, the natural sweetness. This mulberry powder may have a little bit of the sweetness, but it lacks the nuance of matcha. You also won't get the happy tea effect, which comes from the combination of caffeine and L-theanine. After the tasting, Mr. Takada will take us to see how his premium matcha is made, but we still have one more tea to get to. This is also not technically a tea, because it doesn't come from the tea plant. It's made from the leaves of the cherry tree. The leaves bring a slightly tart flavor to the cup and a delicate floral fragrance. If I had to pick one tea that this one tasted like, I would have to say oolong, but it still lacked the strength. It was nice to get the chance to try these tea alternatives, but this tasting reminded me that there's no substitute for the real thing. Tea brings a refined strength and a calm, alert energy that other leaves just can't match. Although tea is incredibly difficult to produce, there is nothing quite like it. This field in Uji is a perfect example of how much work goes into making flavorful cups of tea. Because it was wintertime, the plants were still resting, building up nutrients from the soil so they could release them into the first sprouts of the springtime. The soil here is loose and well fertilized, allowing the roots of the tea plant to penetrate deeper into the ground and absorb more nutrients. Then, these black nets will be stretched over the tea plants a few weeks before the harvest to block out the sun and maximize the sweet and savory flavor. It's difficult work keeping the tea plants alive and healthy for 3 weeks without sunlight, but talented farmers are able to pull it off. Visiting the tea fields in Uji is always a fun experience, but it was this tour of a family matcha mill nearby that reignited my passion for matcha. After touring so many tea factories in Shizuoka, I was starting to get disconnected with the raw essence of tea. Everything had become so precise, so controlled. It seemed that there was no room left for craftsmanship. Just like with the hojicha, it was the slight imperfections that led to the unique character of the final tea. At this family-run mill in Uji, you won't find any air showers or fancy milling equipment. All you'll see is a family dedicated to their craft, and it shows. While the industrial mills can crank out 15 or more kilograms of matcha per hour, they take the slower approach, running these mills at a slow speed to produce an ultra-fine powder. It's this superfine powder that creates not only a smoother texture in the matcha, but also a richer foam. Even just tasting some of the raw powder off the line, you could get a sense of the natural sweetness. This is the mill where our Chinoka matchas are produced, and after trying dozens of pesticide-free matcha in this region, we thought these ones were the most deserving of the title Made in Uji, a region with a 500-year-old reputation for producing the best matcha in Japan. If you want to try these teas for yourself, we'll put a link in the description below. It was refreshing to see that amidst all this pressure to increase the matcha production, some producers were taking the opposite approach, recommitting to quality and experimenting with those subtle nuances that make tea worth drinking. After a long day in Tokoname, Shigaraki, and Uji, we joined Takada-san for dinner. I asked him if the popularity of matcha will bring young people back into the countryside to take over the family business, and without pause, he just said, no. There's nothing to get you terrified of the future like having robots bring you your dinner while a tea industry veteran tells you about the bleak future of the Japanese tea industry. But then, something miraculous happened. A crowd of teenagers were gathering outside the restaurant, wondering what 4 foreigners were doing in this small town outside of Kyoto. It seemed that there may be hope after all. It was refreshing to see a revitalized interest in Japanese tea, and although it may not be enough to save the industry, there were certainly some bright spots on the horizon. The next morning, we would take a short trip over to Takayama, where 90% of Japan's matcha whisks are produced, to learn the techniques required to craft these delicate works of art. The Tanemura family has been making Chasen in this small village for over 500 years, using the bamboo that grows in the surrounding forests. Turning a modest stalk of bamboo into 80 to 120 delicate bristles takes tremendous skill, and it's all done by hand. Yasuburo Tanemura-san has carried on his family's proud legacy as the 25th generation Chasen master. He has been carving bamboo whisks like this for 50 years, and during that time, he's developed a skillful technique. He's one of the country's 18 remaining Chasen masters, and it was a great privilege meeting with him in Takayama. He will demonstrate the 8 stages of turning this stalk of bamboo into a carefully carved bamboo whisk. But before we get to that, we need to find the right materials. The first thing you'll notice on the drive over to Takayama is a sea of bamboo. These bamboo forests grow the perfect raw materials for the famous tea whisk, but learning how to select the right bamboo is almost as important as carving it.
Okay, we're at the house of Tanimura Yasubura-san, and right here we have the aging of the bamboo. So these aren't going to be used for Chasen this year, they're going to be used in 2 to 3 years. So right now, they take fresh bamboo and they age it in these pyramid shapes. And it's going to take 2 to 3 years for them to go from green to yellow to almost a whitish color, and then they can do the carving. And what he just told us is that just judging by, you can see there's a bunch of different lengths here and widths. So this is very thin, but then this one's wider and this one's even wider. And depending on the width, that determines the type of chasen that they're going to make. So these really long, narrow ones are going to be used to make those tall chasen, the really thin ones. And then kind of the medium length ones can be the 80 bristle chasen. And then the really thick ones can be used to make the 100 prong chasen.
The bamboo in this region is perfect for producing shiratake, or white colored chasen. After lightly treating the bamboo and letting it age, it will fade from green to yellowish white. There are actually 3 colors of chasen: shiratake, kurotake, and susutake. The shiratake is made from this aged and lightened madake bamboo. This white bamboo is much more flexible and easier to carve, which is why you'll see more of these white bamboo whisks. The kurotake, or black bamboo chasen, is more rare, and it comes from a different species of bamboo with a darker skin. This bamboo is denser and stiffer, so it makes it more difficult to carve, and it's typically reserved for a premium chasen. Some even believe that this darker bamboo imparts an earthier flavor into the matcha. The third type is susutake, and this is actually made from smoke-aged bamboo. In traditional Japanese homes, bamboo is used as support beams and it gets smoke-aged over time through the use of an erori or open hearth. This smoke creates unique patterns over 50 to 200 years, making each bamboo stalk unique. This is the rarest type of chasen and it's extremely limited in supply. We're going to get to the chasen making in a second, but if you're enjoying this video so far, it would really mean a lot to us if you could like the video and subscribe to see more tea videos in the future. So once the bamboo is selected, aged, and boiled to remove the oils, we are ready to begin the carving process. The first step is to strip off the tough outer skin of the bamboo. He will keep the skin on the handle of the bamboo and on the base of the bristles, but in order to carve the top portion, it needs to be removed. This is called the heigi process, and it allows the carver to access the softer part of the bamboo for crafting the tines. Next comes the splitting of the bamboo. A sharp knife is placed on the top of the stalk and pressure is applied firmly to split the stalk into 16 equally sized portions. Now this humble stalk of bamboo is starting to look almost like a matcha whisk, but it needs way more bristles. Before dividing the bamboo further, we need to remove the inner white flesh or mi of the bamboo. This material is softer, more porous, and less flexible, so it needs to be discarded. The 16 prongs are split horizontally and the white part is bent inward so it can be broken off the stalk. Now we have just the outer flexible part of the bamboo, but these 16 pieces need to be divided further into thin bristles, and it needs to be done very delicately. The knife is used to make the initial cut, but the splitting of the bristles is done by hand. This is the part that can really only be done by a master. In general, it takes about 15 years of making whisks like this to be considered a master. Remember that the amount of bristles for each whisk is not decided at this stage. It's already been decided by the selection of the bamboo. The wider the bamboo, the more bristles the whisk will have. Once the whisk has its bristles carved, it will be soaked in water. This will make it more pliable and flexible for the next stage. This is also why you should soak your bamboo whisk in water for a few seconds before using it, as bamboo can be very brittle when it's dry, and the last thing you want is to snap off one of these bristles when you're whisking. Then the bristles need to be thinned even further. This step requires careful attention to detail, and the master, Yasuburo Tanamura-san, needs to carefully monitor the thickness of each individual tine. The tops of the tines will be slightly thinner so they can be curled later. Now we end up with something that looks more like a paintbrush than a true matcha whisk, but we're getting close. The whisk needs to be shaped, which is done by curling the bristles with a knife, almost like how you would curl a ribbon on a present. Then comes the most delicate step of all, the mentori, where each individual tine needs to be inspected and carved to perfection. Here, the chasen master rounds off any sharp edges and tapers off the thickness towards the tip, so the top of the bristles are narrower than the base of the bristles. The bristles are trained outwards and inwards in an alternating fashion, and the thread is woven through each to lock it into place. Once the bristles have been threaded, the chasen is ready for final inspection. This is where the chasen master will adjust the whisk into its final shape. There are 3 different chasen shapes, and they correspond with the 3 main tea ceremony schools in Japan: Urasenki, Omotosenki, and Mushano-Koji Senki. These were founded by the 3 great-grandsons of Senno Rikyu, the father of the modern Japanese tea ceremony, and they all have slightly different approaches to how matcha should be prepared. In the Urasenki tradition, the chasen is shaped with a wide, open spread and highly curved tines. This allows for maximum aeration, producing a thick, creamy layer of fine foam on the top of the tea. The goal is a smooth, approachable bowl of matcha with a rich texture. By the way, if you want to try the best matcha teas we found during our travels around Japan and recreate that beautiful foamy texture and smooth umami flavor, you can find them at neoteas.com. In contrast, the Omotosenki school uses a chasen with straighter, more restrained tines. This design limits the amount of air incorporated into the tea, resulting in little to no foam. The surface of the matcha appears more natural, reflecting a philosophy that emphasizes simplicity and the pure character of the tea itself. The Mushano-Koji Senki school takes the middle path. Here the chasen will have a more balanced shape, with a moderate curve that produces a light, refined foam, less than Urasenki but more than Omotosenki. The result is a harmonious balance between texture and purity. So how do these bamboo whisks compare to a typical metal whisk? Even though these bamboo whisks are still carved the same way they were 500 years ago, they still are the best tools for creating that beautiful foam on your matcha. Rather than slicing through the water like a metal whisk, the bamboo creates a slight friction that introduces air to the matcha and creates that beautiful foam. The many tines can also break up the matcha clumps, distributing them evenly into the water and creating a more consistent taste. The These bristles are strong yet delicate, so they can brush up against the sides of the matcha bowl without scratching it. The bamboo whisks are also completely silent, allowing you to enjoy a nice meditative moment while you whisk your tea. These handmade chasen are not only a work of art, but also the best tool for preparing matcha. But unfortunately, there are many threats facing this traditional way of life. When meeting with the Tanamura family, they explained to us that they just started noticing these flowers on the bamboo crop, which is a bad omen. Bamboo rarely flowers, but when it does, it often signals the end of the life cycle. Entire groves can die off shortly afterwards. Since it takes decades for new bamboo to mature to the quality needed for a chasen, this poses a serious risk to the future of the craft. Traditionally, the area around Takayama supplied much of the bamboo used for chasen production, but in recent years, certain chasen makers have increasingly had to source bamboo from other regions. An even larger problem is the loss of chasen makers. This art has been passed from father to son for generations, but in the past few decades, it's become harder to get younger generations to stay around and continue the family business. There used to be 50 chasen making families in this village of Takayama, but now there are only 16. The Tanamura family is one of the remaining few that produce these Takayama chasen the same way they were produced 500 years ago. The son of Yasuburo Tanamura-san, Keiichiro Tanamura-san, made the decision to return to his hometown and continue his father's legacy. He's been training in chasen making for 9 years, and he'll soon be ready to take over the family business. He even has a son himself, who will one day be taught the art of chasen making. At Suika-en, the traditional art of chasen making is alive and well, and hopefully it will continue for many generations to come. If you'd like to support all the great work they do, you can find a link to their website in the description. After meeting with traditional craftsmen in Shigaraki, Uji, and Takayama, it was clear that a lot of these traditional livelihoods were being threatened. The world is changing quickly, and it seems that in our modern convenience culture, there may not be enough space for traditions like this. While interest in these crafts is waning in Japan, it seems that it's increasing abroad. Nowhere is this more apparent than in Uji City, which gets thousands of tourists every day, and the main attraction is matcha and green tea. We stopped over here for lunch and couldn't think of a more appropriate dish than matcha soba, made with matcha-infused wheat noodles. But we had something special in store for Arthur, who claims to enjoy the flavor of every food, no matter what it is.
It's it's very special, but it's not as bad as I expected. So, for the sake of this video, I will finish this. Look at this, guys.
We enjoyed our time in Kyoto, but all good things must come to an end, and this is no different. While central Japan is home to the most famous sites, there's an entire island in the south that produces some of the country's best tea, and it was just waiting to be explored. We took the train down to Fukuoka to explore the nearby sub-region of Yame, which is quickly building up a reputation for producing the best matcha in Japan. The specialty of matcha from Yame is this hika, a nutty, slightly roasted flavor that's reminiscent of kinako, or roasted soybean flour. This flavor profile is rare in a matcha, and it comes from a unique step in the production process. We headed off to Yame to meet with one of the matcha producers we work with and learn what makes this region so special. But before that, we needed to make a quick stop at this sacred spot. This is the spot where, 600 years ago, tea was first brought to Yame. In 1423, a Japanese Buddhist monk, Master Shizui, came back from China with tea seeds and planted them on this temple which he founded. The Buddhist monks in Japan found that this plant energized them, helping maintain their focus during long periods of meditation, thanks to the caffeine and L-theanine. They soon discovered that this region produced remarkable quality tea, with a rich and full-bodied taste thanks to the fertile soil and climate. Morning mists and river fog shroud the tea plants, partially blocking them from the sunlight and allowing them to develop a sweeter flavor. This small region of Yame still produces over 90% of all the tea in Fukuoka Prefecture and around 3% of Japan's total tea production. We got lucky and were treated to a surprise gong demonstration. The bell ringer explained to us that this gong is still used, rung at 5 p.m. every day to let the farmers know that the workday is over. You can feel the power of this gong reverberate through the valley, carrying with it centuries of tea history. But other than the ideal climate and history, why else is Yame matcha so good? Good matcha begins with good tencha, the leaves designed specifically for matcha. If you were to make matcha out of any old tea leaves, the flavor would be incredibly bitter. The tea plants need to be shaded for at least 3 weeks before the harvest to improve their sweetness. The leaves are then steamed, dried, and they have their stems separated. What happens next, however, is truly extraordinary. We visited the Oishi Tea Factory in Yame to see how some of our newest matchas are made. This is their completely newly built tencha factory, and we were among the first to visit it. With the matcha boom, producers everywhere are scaling up their facilities to keep up with rising demand, and part of that is producing more tencha. An important part of tencha is the sorting phase. You don't want any imperfections in the leaves, as these will detract from the green color and naturally sweet umami flavor. This machine tumbles the dried leaves together to separate the stems from the leaves, and then the stems pass through these holes, leaving just the leaves inside. If there are any imperfections left in the tencha, they won't make it through this next phase. This is a color sorting machine, one of the most technologically advanced machines in a tea producer's arsenal. It uses a camera to scan the leaves as they're passing through, and if it identifies a yellow color, it will use a small jet of air to push it out. This will get rid of the remaining stem fragments in the tencha. But that unique hika flavor we mentioned earlier actually comes from this next phase. This right here is a drying machine, which will take the leaves down to about 3% moisture, producing a finished tencha. This is where the magic of Yame comes in, as they run this machine slightly hotter in order to bake the leaves and impart a light roast onto them, giving the matcha this elusive hika that makes it so sought after in the world of matcha. The tencha leaves need to be separated by size first, as the smaller leaf fragments will roast faster than the larger leaf fragments. Once every leaf has achieved the perfect level of roast, they will be combined to form the finished product. This is not the same process used to make a roasted tea like hojicha, for example. The temperature is much lower. These tencha leaves are dried at 80 to 120 degrees Celsius or 175 to 250 Fahrenheit, whereas hojicha is roasted between 150 to 200 degrees Celsius or about 300 to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. What the producers at Oishi are going for here is subtlety. Matcha is not a roasted tea. It's meant to be an expression of these vibrant green flavors, but a hint of nuttiness is just enough to round it out and make the flavor more interesting. It's a delicate art, and the producers here in Yame have it down perfectly. All this drying sounds great in theory, but can you actually notice a difference in the flavor? For that, we would need to head into the tasting room to see these Yame matcha in action. But first, we stopped at this little spot for lunch, and the piece de resistance is this matcha Mont Blanc. It was extremely delicious, combining the sweet notes of chestnut with matcha. You could tell that good matcha was used for this, and you'd expect nothing less from Yame. Eating strands of matcha-infused cream over a whipped topping base and a flaky pastry in front of a tea field is just about the best dessert I can think of. It's always cool to travel to these tea regions and see the tea itself being used in the cuisine. It lets you know that here, tea isn't just a job, but a rich culinary tradition to be cherished. But on to the tasting room. In this tasting, we were looking for a couple of different things. First, we wanted to find the best matcha for neoteas.com. We're going to measure out 2 grams of each of these powders and see what makes them different. 1 yen coin equals approximately 1 gram, so they use 2 yen taped together as a counterweight for their matcha tastings. The first thing we're looking for in these matcha is the color. This color test is a popular way to assess a matcha powder, but it can only tell you so much. First, it's an easy way to observe the color of the matcha. Greener matcha isn't necessarily better, but all the best quality matcha tends to have the greenest color. This is due not only to the careful removal of stems and imperfections, but also the careful shading of the tea plants, which boosts the chlorophyll content of the leaves. We're also looking for the smoothness of the grind. Premium matcha should be talcum powder smooth so that it doesn't create a gritty texture when you drink it. This finer powder also has a higher relative surface area, which leads to a richer flavor extraction, and it can even produce a better foam. So far, the one we're currently offering, the organic Saimidori matcha, has the strongest color. But what we really want is this subtle nutty flavor. The reason we like this one is because it has the perfect combination of these subtle roasted flavors, as well as the vegetal and savory profiles of a classic matcha. This to us is the perfect representation of a Yame matcha, a delicate hika balanced with bold umami. If you want to try it for yourself, we'll put the link down below. But let's turn up the heat a little bit and look for a hojicha powder. Hojicha powder is made from roasted tea leaves ground into a fine powder, and it's becoming very popular thanks to its use in hojicha lattes. This powder is lower in caffeine, more affordable, and it also produces a rich, roasted flavor similar to a hot chocolate. We compared both the dark roast and the light roast from Oishi and found that the dark roast had more to offer in terms of flavor. If you also want to try this one for yourself and start making your own hojicha lattes at home, we'll also put a link to that in the description below. It was so great getting to explore the region of Yame and seeing what makes it so special. While Uji gets all the credit, there are great matchas produced in other regions all around Japan, and this is just one of them. Tea is produced even further south than Yame, and in fact, the country's #1 tea farmer is located in the small town of Shibushi in Kagoshima Prefecture. Sakamoto-san has been growing Gyokuro tea organically for over 50 years now. He started on this family tea field when he was just a little boy, and in the 80s, he started to garner some attention for doing something unthinkable: growing Gyokuro without the use of pesticides or chemicals. Gyokuro is the most challenging tea to produce, and in order to capture this unique sweet and savory flavor, the tea plants need to be kept alive for at least 3 weeks with almost no sunlight. Most farmers turn to artificial fertilizers to boost the nutrients in the soil, but Sakamoto has a secret, which we're going to unveil shortly. This secret technique has made him a legend in this area, and just this year, he was awarded the top prize from the Japanese Ministry of Agriculture, meaning that he is considered to be the #1 farmer in all of Japan. We've been working with Sakamoto-san for 10 years now, and he produces some of our most popular teas, so we were so proud to hear the news that he was getting the recognition he deserves. This prize is the highest honor a farmer can achieve, and there's no one more deserving than him. We made the journey over to Sakamoto's organic tea garden to celebrate over a glass of cold-brewed Gyokuro tea. We were greeted by Sakamoto and our old friend Yuta, who we hadn't seen in 7 years, making for a very nice reunion. Mr. Sakamoto had prepared a table of his teas as well as a seasonal selection of Sakura mochi. But the first thing you'll notice when entering the office of Sakamoto-san is not the tea, but the paintings. In addition to being a talented farmer, he's also a talented painter, and each one of these pieces tells a story. Perhaps the most captivating is this painting he made for his niece. You see, when Sakamoto was first working on his family farm, he noticed something was happening. Many of his family members were struck with disease, and in some cases, cancer. He made this painting for his niece during her battle with cancer, depicting her as a warrior, strong, brave, ready to do battle. The cherry blossoms represent the impermanence of life, blooming for a few fleeting moments and then taken from us during their prime. Sakamoto was determined not to let his family fight in vain. He believed the chemicals they were using on the tea plants were partly to blame, and he vowed that when it was his turn to take over the family business, he would turn it completely organic. Through great effort and sacrifice over a long period of 7 years, he and his brother made good on that promise, and now his field is a shining beacon for all organic tea growers in his region. It was during our first tasting that you could really see the impressive range of Sakamoto-san. Not only does he produce what is likely the best organic Gyokuro in all of Japan, but also some fantastic roasted tea and matcha as well. There are many similarities between matcha and Gyokuro. These are the two highest quality teas in Japan, and the only ones that are priced in dollars per gram rather than cents per gram. They come from the same plants, so Gyokuro farmers like Sakamoto can shift their production from one to the other. If they're making matcha, they will first produce these tencha leaves. While these tencha leaves are from the same long-shaded tea plants harvested the same way, you can see they look very different when compared to Gyokuro. Gyokuro is rolled into these tight needle-shaped leaves. In fact, it even goes through an additional rolling phase when compared to sencha. This rolling breaks the outer membrane of the leaf, but then quickly seals it up to lock in the flavor until it's ready for infusion. When you brew up a Gyokuro tea, these leaves open up and release their flavor into the water, creating a rich, flavorful infusion. Gyokuro leaves are so tightly rolled, they often require a full 2 minutes to brew, rather than the standard 1-minute brewing time of a typical sencha. Tencha, on the other hand, is unrolled. This means that although it's made with young shaded leaves, you won't get the same tasting experience if you prepare it as a leaf tea. The flavor is protected within the membrane of the leaf. These leaves are really meant to serve only one purpose: to be ground into matcha. A few years ago, Sakamoto started getting serious about matcha production and purchased his own ishiusu, or stone mills. What makes Sakamoto's matcha unique is that they were produced by a legendary Gyokuro farmer, so this unwavering dedication to umami shows up in his matcha as well as his Gyokuro. Umami is the most sought-after flavor in Japanese green tea. It translates to savory, and it's the legendary 5th flavor in cuisine. It's normally something that you would only find in a hearty meal, like a miso soup or ramen. But thanks to the strong amino acid profile of the tea leaves, it can also be found in matcha and Gyokuro. In fact, when describing the flavor of Gyokuro, you find yourself using words that are more commonly associated with food than with tea. Brothy, sweet, seaweedy, and even salty are not uncommon to find in the tasting notes of a good Gyokuro. These are the flavors that Gyokuro lovers like myself can't get enough of. But not all Gyokuro is the same. Just like wine is broken down into different varietals, tea is broken down into different cultivars, or plant varieties. Each one has slightly different flavor profiles, and in warm, subtropical climates, a farmer can grow a diverse variety of them. We visited this field back in 2019, and at the time, Sakamoto had been entrusted by the Japanese government to be among the first to cultivate the new cultivar Seimei. Now, those baby Seimei tea plants are fully grown and producing delicious gyokuro like the kiwami. As a cold brew, this tea expresses more of its sweetness, with notes of caramel and licorice. Using cold water not only alters the temperature of the tea, but also the chemical composition, as different components are extracted at different temperatures. Theanine, the amino acid that produces the sweet and savory flavor of gyokuro, can still be extracted, even with cooler water. This is why cold brewing works so well for this tea. But we also have the opportunity to try some of Sakamoto's other gyokuro teas. The Saimidori is his tried and true cultivar, producing a light and sweet flavor and a super green color. Saimidori is already a sweet cultivar, but when it's shaded to make gyokuro, it takes it to a whole new level. This tea has notes of cantaloupe melon, cool cucumber, and caramel, and if you want to try it for yourself, you can find the Sakamoto So on our website. But Sakamoto's pride and joy is the Haruto 34 cultivar. This is a crossbreeding of the Sakimidori and Saimidori, and when shaded, it takes on this super sweet and floral expression. To me, the Haruto 34 Gyokuro has a warm, cotton candy sweetness with delicate florals and a smooth umami finish. This tea is truly one of a kind, and Sakamoto turns it into his signature Sakamoto Zen Gyokuro, which is only available in limited quantities. The Haruto can also be used to make the Sakamoto Zen matcha, without a doubt the most umami-rich matcha I've ever tasted. This bowl is like drinking liquid theanine, and you know that no other farmer in the world could pull off such a flavor. After drinking Sakamoto Gyokuro for the better part of a decade, I can identify this as a Sakamoto matcha right away. It has his fingerprints all over it. It combines the best of both matcha and gyokuro, and if you want to find out what I mean by that, you'll need to try it for yourself. But the incredible work of Sakamoto is not just visible in the tasting room, but also in the tea fields. As we mentioned before, Sakamoto has been committed to growing organic gyokuro since the 80s, and he's one of the few farmers able to achieve the rich umami flavor of a gyokuro without applying chemicals to the tea plants. The umami flavor comes from theanine, and in order to produce theanine in the leaves, the tea plant needs to take in nitrogen from the roots. If the tea plant doesn't have a steady supply of nitrogen, not only will it not be able to produce an umami flavor, it won't even be able to fuel the growth of the tea leaves. Sakamoto's secret lies in the earth. Kagoshima is surrounded by the ocean, which means that there's a plethora of sedimentary rock in this region. As Sakamoto once explained, sedimentary rock is a collection of nutrients collected over millions of years. In theory, these sediments could be used to fertilize tea plants, but only if it could be activated. For this, Sakamoto leaned on the traditional Japanese art of bokashi fertilization, using organic food waste as a source of nutrients. He combined these two materials to produce his famous organic fertilizer, and to this day, it's been the secret to his success. Farmers around Japan now even buy his fertilizer for use in their own tea fields. But this organic fertilizer has a side effect that was even more interesting. By creating a more natural soil free of chemicals, not only do the tea plants thrive, but so does everything else. The earthworms and insects are able to move through the soil and loosen it up. Sakamoto demonstrates this by sticking a bamboo pole into the ground and meeting very little resistance. This soft soil allows the roots of the tea plant to penetrate deeper into the ground and absorb more nutrients. Sakamoto's tea field is a living ecosystem, an environment that supports not only the growth of great tasting tea, but also a diverse range of flora and fauna. Sakamoto explained to us that while there's great demand for his teas, he cannot scale up production. He has tried in the past, and they cannot maintain the level of quality that would be worthy of bearing his family's name. He instead focuses on producing a smaller quantity of super premium tea. But that doesn't mean that he will stop innovating and adding new teas to his assortment. In fact, we have a big announcement for all of you.
This is a Kirari 31. It's a 3-year-old plant, and if you go down, we can see that the size of the plant is still pretty small. And as of next year, Mr. Sakamoto said that he can harvest this tea, and the big announcement is that this could be and mean the return of the famous Gyokuro Chamusume.
It was such a full circle moment returning to the field of Sakamoto once again. When we visited him back in 2019, he was just growing seedlings of the Seimei, and now they're being used to produce some of his most popular gyokuro and matcha teas. Now we are once again at the field of young tea plants, only these will be used to resurrect his most famous creation, the Gyokuro Cha Musume. We are so honored to be working with Sakamoto, a farmer who aligns so perfectly with our values. not only producing great tasting teas without compromise, but also letting us share his story with the world. I would like to personally thank you all for liking, sharing, and commenting on his videos over the past years. From what he told us, this has really helped him get the word out and supported his business tremendously. Now he's achieved the highest level of recognition in his field, and we can't think of anyone who deserves it more. If you would like to help us support Mr. Sakamoto and all the great work that he does, you can try some of his teas on our website, neoteas.com. Before we head to the island of Tanegashima, we have one more stop to make. This is Chiran, a tiny little town you've probably never heard of, and yet they produce some of the best tea in the entire country. I was here back in 2019 when it was even less discovered. Now, you'll find some tea vendors selling tea from Chiran, but it's still very much a hidden gem. Chiran is home to one of my all-time favorite matchas, the Chiran Premium, which has a subtle note of cocoa, and also the best cold brew tea I've ever tasted, the Shizuoka Sencha. These are both some of the most popular teas at neoteas.com, but we also wanted to meet with the producers and see if they had anything else new to add to our assortment. After tasting a few more teas, we found a few that we wanted to add to our collection: the Asuka Sencha and the Sencha Nohana. While the Nohana is well-rounded and mild, the Asuka is slightly sweeter, thicker, and more umami. Both of these teas are beautiful examples of what makes this region so special. With 2 new teas under our belts, we hopped on the ferry from Kagoshima Harbor.
Okay, we're sitting now in the speedboat, going in direction from Kagoshima to Tanegashima, which is a southern island at the very south of the main island of Japan. And tomorrow we're gonna see Mr. Matsushita, who is one of the producers of our Shincha. So we're very looking forward to meet him. First time we meet him. So very curious how Tanegashima is, how his farm is, and what the experience will be. We have a little bit of luggage, but unfortunately,
A little bit too much.
a little bit. Unfortunately, the truck of our car is not so big, but that's not the biggest problem. The real problem is Agnese's suitcase. If you look at it, it's as big as the trunk of the car. That's gonna be a tricky one. If we can fit Agnese's suitcase, we're gonna make it. If we can't, then we have a problem. Maybe. Let's have a look. Oh! I think we can fit my bag on the floor. You can fit it on the floor. Give it to me. If you never played Tetris in your life, voila.
Can you see the back?
Yeah.
Can you do
Obviously. Okay. With some restrictions, but. Okay, so I would say we made it. So welcome to Tanegashima. We just arrived. And it's sunny, it's warm, and it just feels different here. The energy is different.
Tanegashima is one of the largest islands in the Osumi chain, and what makes it unique is how flat the terrain is, which is rare in such a volcanically active region. Its climate is warm and humid, influenced by the Kuroshio current, and the tea here is among the first to hit the market in the spring of each year. Shincha, or new tea, is one of the most sought-after teas in Japan, marking the beginning of the new harvest. People wait patiently all winter long to be among the first to enjoy the first spring Shincha, and producers compete to launch the very first tea of the new year. The climate of Tanegashima Island gives it a huge advantage in this race, and we always like to order the fresh harvest from Matsushita-san. That would be tomorrow morning, but first, we would spend the night here on the island and get a chance to try one of the local delicacies.
What is this?
Chicken.
っていうのね。シェルですね。
シェル。
目？
で、これね、美味しいんですよ。海で。
Oh wow.
これ食べてみてください。美味しいでしょ？美味しいでしょ？ここをね、ここを。
Very nice.
お、そう。
It's super nice.
食べてみて、ロザンナさん。
美味しいです。はいなら。
Wow.
So
It's super good.
Oh my god.
Guys, we
Where
just-
have we landed?
Killed a barracuda. Actually, we got 3 of them.
We woke up to a beautiful Tanegashima morning, and with our bags stuffed into the back of the car, we headed out to visit the farm, but what we saw next really surprised us.
Wow.
It was like driving through a subtropical forest that looked almost Caribbean compared to the mountains of central Japan. The tea plants were already sprouting. It seems that few extra degrees of latitude really makes a difference. And while the fields in Shizuoka were producing little more than some tiny buds, these Tanegashima fields were flush with this blanket of light green sprouts. We soon met up with the father and son team that operates Matsushita Seicha, a family-owned tea farm here in Tanegashima. Even though they manage a small plot of land, they are still able to produce an impressive range of tea varieties, including Shoju, a tea variety that is unique to Tanegashima Island. They do not believe in using fertilizer or pesticides on their tea plants, and believe that tea should taste just as nature intended, fed only by the nutrients that occur naturally on the field. Just like the rest of Japan, Tanegashima Island is also experiencing a strong decline in tea farmers. There used to be 200 tea farmers here in Tanegashima, and now there's just a small fraction of that. It was refreshing to see a father and son duo at this tea field, letting us know that at least some people from the younger generations were willing to continue their family business. After a short visit to the factory, we followed them to the tea fields. This origin tree is the oldest tea plant on the island, and it's where Tanegashima tea first got started.
Okay guys, so I got some interesting historical information. 3 very important families in the world of Japanese green tea came here in Tanegashima in the year 1909, which corresponds to the Meiji 42 year. They came from Shizuoka originally to Tanegashima, and so there is one Matsushita family, another Matsushita family, and the family of Kurita-san. And Kurita-san created the Kuritawase. They selected the good ones from the Zairaishu, which was originally from Shizuoka.
Zairai is often referred to as a cultivar, but actually it refers to any Japanese tea plants that are seed propagated. Originally, tea plants were brought over from China and planted throughout Japan. These plants began to drop their seeds and grow new, genetically unique tea plants. These plants would all harvest at different times and produce completely different flavors, making it a nightmare for tea producers to manage. The solution was cultivars, or cultivated varieties. By cloning tea plants using a clipping rather than a seed, you could grow genetically identical plants that thrived under the same conditions, produced the same flavors, and sprouted at the same time. On modern tea fields, you'll find farmers now separate their plot of land by cultivar, making it easier to care for and harvest tea plants. After a short history lesson, it was time to have some fun. We will be tasting the Kuritawase, a rare cultivar that can trace its roots back to the wild Zairai tea plants.
I think the tea tasting en plein air is
Incredible.
it's incredible.
Incredible.
感謝します、心から。
Getting to drink a cup of Kuritawase green tea in the middle of a Kuritawase tea field was such a special way to kick off our visit to Tanegashima. This cultivar is sweet with notes of chestnut and a light and fresh acidity in the finish, making it the perfect choice for a shincha. The harvest was coming soon, and after visiting this field, we knew it was going to be a good one. You can find the Tanegashima shincha on our website, neoteas.com, for a limited time if you would like to try it for yourself. This tea tastes really good, whether you're drinking it on the field or at home. So the shincha was definitely confirmed, but we were also looking for something even more rare. Black tea, also called wakocha, is incredibly rare in Japan, making up less than 1% of the total tea production. For years, we've been sampling Japanese black teas and hadn't found one that we felt was worth it, until now. This black tea really has an approachably smooth caramel flavor. What separates Japanese black teas from other black teas is this slightly sweeter honey or jam aroma, and this one definitely has it locked in.
So we are here at Matsushita Seicha in this beautiful Kuritawase field, drinking Kuritawase, and we asked them why they decided to produce black tea from the second harvest on instead of producing bancha or sencha like the way it's normally done at other tea farms. And they explained us that since the cultivation is completely organic, they don't use any pesticide, chemical, not even the fertilizer, the plants tend to get sick. So from the second harvest on, due to that, the color of the tea leaves would not be, let's say, good enough, green enough to produce sencha or bancha. So they decided to go for black tea production.
The Matsushita family takes pride not only in their tea fields, but also in their island. Just recently, they have been helping other tea farmers on Tanegashima make the switch to organic farming, and we hope to see more fields like theirs soon. If you take a look between the rows, you see a natural, healthy soil with ferns growing in between the tea plants. This is a good indication that the tea plants are part of a thriving ecosystem, and not only do these tea fields support the growth of delicious tea, but also a diverse array of flora and fauna.
So actually something very interesting. Maybe you come a little bit closer. We see here at the border there's a slightly reddish color, a little bit orangey reddish. We see it on several leaves, and this is due to the cold temperature and the young sprouts. They get a little bit red, and then the bigger they are and the bigger they get, then they develop this intense yellowish green color. And we are now, today is March 20th. And they say it's the first week of April, so in around 2 weeks the harvest will be ready, and then they will harvest the tea.
In addition to the kuretawase, we also offer a saimidori shincha, made from these tea plants here. Saimidori offers a lighter and sweeter flavor compared to kuretawase, and it sprouts slightly later. So you can see the buds are slightly smaller, and it may take them an extra week before they're ready. As we leave behind this magical Isle of Tea and head back to Tokyo, we can't help but look forward to this year's tea harvest. The crazy part about working in the tea industry is that you really never know what's going to happen until the springtime. You hear anecdotes about yield, rainfall, and temperature, but until the leaves are picked, we really don't know what's going to happen. At least in Tanegashima, we get a sneak peek, the best possible guess before the harvest itself. Coming here is like glimpsing a few weeks into the future, and to us, that future looks bright. And so, our journey through the world of tea comes to an end. We leave Japan with uncertainty, yes, but also with hope. Across Japan, the world of tea is changing, becoming almost unrecognizable from the one many of these farmers grew up in. A faster world reaches for convenience, while the slow rituals of quality and craftsmanship ask for patience. And yet, in the hills of Uji, the mountains of Shizuoka, the volcanic soils of Kagoshima, and the quiet farms beyond, the producers are holding strong. They rise before the heat of the day, and they listen to the weather, to the soil, and to the leaves. They carry forward a craft that has survived for centuries, through war, famine, and hardship. And still, each spring, the green sprouts return. Tea has endured because it's more than just a drink. It's patience and dedication. It's a landscape captured in a bowl. It's the work of generations, passed quietly from one set of hands to the next. And the people who make it are among the most dedicated and resilient we've ever met. In their care, in their humility, and in their devotion to doing things properly, we find reason to believe that these traditions will continue. As long as there are people who care about quality, sustainability, and craftsmanship, Japanese tea will not disappear. It will adapt, it will endure, and like the plant itself, it will rise each year and reach towards the light. To all the producers who welcomed us into their fields, their factories, and their homes, thank you. Thank you for trusting us with your stories and for allowing us to share them with the world. If you would like to help support the dozens of talented farmers we work with, you can go to neoteas.com and try some of their teas. And if this story moved you, we would be grateful if you could like this video and share it with someone you care about. Thank you all so much for watching and being part of our tea journey. We couldn't have done it without you.